Hello YouTube viewer, thank you for clicking on my video. Just wanted to share some ideas, do a little scatting, wax and wane philosophically about this idea of EDC, everyday carry. It's nothing really new. In fact, at any time in history, if you went up to a gentleman, a man, and checked his possessions that he had on his person, chances are he was carrying the tools that he needed to get him through that day. Whether it was pocket change for a subway ride or flint tools back in Neolithic times to carve meat or start a fire. EDC in a way has always been around. Now it has changed a lot. Like I said, doing some scatting, had an idea, going to go a little different way in that EDC, yes, you can have some very useful tools, come in very handy every day, without a doubt. You can carry these very easily on your person, wouldn't even notice it. But not so much as tools that you would use every day, maybe as a memento, maybe as an inanimate companion that you can carry with you, something familiar that's going to go with you through the day, something that will collect memories the way books on a shelf might collect dust. For example, looking at this collection here, this little knife was the last knife that my father carried with him. He always had a pocket knife on him. Here was another one that he used to carry, decades before, and I remember it, even though he was a memento that he was carrying, his EDC. I've seen him pull this thing out, use it to cut meat, dinner time, various different tasks. When he wore this one out, this was the latest knife that he had, an old timer. I forget the model, but that's what he was carrying when he, up until he had his stroke and didn't carry his things anymore. But yeah, just the idea that above and beyond just their use and the things that they can do for us, the idea that, well, I don't want to say necessarily a relationship, but like I said, this idea of you have these companions that are going with you through time. I know on some of my knives, they'll have scratches, scrapes, maybe even little chunks torn out of them. And some of those marks, I'll give it some character, you could say, but also remind me of what happened to cause them. Oh, that's right. That's when I was stranded in the middle of the night, leaky radiator hose, and I used that to get my car running again and get me home safe. Things like that. And you hang on to that for years and years and years, and it carries forward. So that's just kind of like an idea of EDC. These pens here, they're more expensive than maybe a Bic that you would just, a plastic ballpoint pen that you would just pick up for writing. There's nothing really special about these. They basically will write just as well as that 15, 20-cent Bic pen. But you can refill these. In fact, these are different materials. This is like the jotter. This is a cross pen. This is a Schaefer. And this one is actually kind of fancy. It's made of sterling silver. You could maybe give this as a graduation present or when someone gets a promotion at work to commemorate that. And that's something that they can use and carry with them throughout the day. And it would remind them of the achievement, remind them of the person that perhaps gave them that gift. Talking about a companion through time, this watch I purchased, which is really one of the first watches, if probably not the first watch I actually purchased for myself as an adult. With my own money I got working at a job. One of my first jobs was at a bank. And that was in 1987. As of this video, it still works and keeps, it's a Seiko. Seikos are pretty tough and robust. And it keeps that time just as well as it did back in 1987. Growing up, I noticed some of the adult males would carry this tool, P38. They usually got it in their military service. Carried around because it was still handy, not just for opening cans, but as a screwdriver. But again, why carry a can opener? It kind of reminds them of something. This also, you get these at Sears, had like 4 screwdriver blades. could scrape, pry, as well as use it as a screwdriver. The venerable Zippo lighter. In fact, I got this one from my father, maybe, wow, like over 30 years ago. Had it engraved for him. And he did actually carry it for a while. But the thing about the Zippos, the old-fashioned Zippos, is they dry out. You never really know when they're going to dry out. And you have to maintain them. The flint runs down. You have to replace it. You have to have fuel for it. If it's the only thing you're carrying, unfortunately, and it goes out on you, well, guess what? You're not going to be lighting your cigarettes. My dad worked civil service, so pens like this were very, very familiar. And again, I picked this up and that old familiar feel. These were always laying around the house when I was a kid. Bring them from work. And they usually ended up as part of my school supplies. So yeah, it's like, bam, I hold that and I'm there at my kitchen table, 8 years old, working on my homework. This is something else that I bought for myself. And I don't know if you can see it, put my initials on the clip there. Kind of high end, but it was something really nice I got for myself. And it's kind of reminds me to strive for excellence. And it's a fountain pen. One thing about these fountain pen, and particularly the nibs, talk about really getting personal. After years of writing, you wear down the tip in such a way that it conforms to your style of writing. It's very biometric. And if you actually lend it to someone, they could ruin that. And then when you go to write, it throws it off. It would maybe smear, not make good contact with the paper, and wouldn't write so well. So that's something that over time, it gets used to you, and you leave your impression on it. It's just an idea, a little investment, and in the case of the Zippo, maybe a little more work. You'd have to refill them, which might not always be convenient. And there's a lot to be said for the throwaways. Yeah, you just keep using, and get rid of it. Once that runs out, if you lose it, well, that was 15 cents. And like I said, it's going to write just as well as any of these that I have here on the table. But there's something a little special about, you know what, starting a job with this pen, retiring with that same pen in your pocket. You know, you carried it to work with you. It existed with you through time, through space. Good times, bad times, it was there in your pocket ready to do its job. You marked the hours of your life, the days and dates of your life. 20, 30, in this case, yeah, over 30 years. It was there for the good times, birthdays, celebrations, just being around the people you love, man. And it was also there like a loyal friend, marking those tough hours, you know, when maybe things were really, really rough. Had that long, dark night of the soul. That's just another little idea about this whole EDC, whole EDC idea. This is unscripted. I'm just shooting from the hip here, just being really, really sincere. Back in the 70s, there's a reason for this, I'm going to explain. The principal of my school, Mr. C.C. Norris, tallest man I think I've ever met in my life, had this booming voice. When he spoke, he got our attentions. Even if we were asking like little rascals, bam, we stood to and we were going to listen to him. I remember a lecture he gave us one day. He talked about this idea, and I've heard it, various iterations of it throughout the years. But 10 things every man should have on his person. And that always stuck with me. It's like, wow, okay, you know what? These could be indicators of the type of gentleman that you're dealing with. This could tell you something about, you know, their life. If they're engaged with society and others in a positive way, or maybe not so much. So there's a lot to this 10 things a man should be carrying with him. If I remember correctly, so many decades ago, One of the things was a pen. You know, obviously, you need to write stuff down, sign your checks, contracts, documents, anything like that. You always want to have a pen. Someone gives you a phone number, write down date and time, size of some tool or something you need. It's always good to have. That was one thing. Stamps. Always having postage stamps. That was another thing that was on his list. If you were engaged, if you were successful, if you're doing what you needed to do, I guess before the internet especially, yes, you needed stamps. You needed to communicate with people far off. Maybe you needed to send in a bill, send in a resume, a proposal, and that took postage. Back then, that was really one of the only ways to send documents and that type of mail. A library card was another thing on that list. I remember that. And in a way, that was our Google, that was our Wikipedia back then, the library card. This was someone that needed access to information, not the same old, same old. So they were dynamic, their life was changing. They were obviously involved in big complicated things if they needed access to new knowledge. And I think one of the things was a comb. If I'm not mistaken, I can't give you the whole list at this time, but one of the other things I'm sure that was on it was a voter's registration card. Of course, one of the most, actually that represents two of the most solemn duties any citizen can perform. Voting, of course, selecting who's going to lead our country, who is going to be the leader of the free world, in fact. Also, I know in my state, there comes an obligation with that. If you have a voter's registration card, well, you're thrown into the mix to be selected for jury duty, which is, again, one of the most sacred duties any citizen can perform. The laws, justice, it rides on your shoulders. And a lot of people want to blow it off. It's a hassle. In fact, they look down on people who actually serve on juries as not being smart enough to find a way to get off of them. Way wrong attitude. I don't know. This really isn't instructional. I'm not talking about quality of these items. I'm not saying you should have these items. Just this idea that, you know what, I think it's kind of neat. Like some people have a scrapbook and collect things and whatever, but your EDC, selecting your EDC, not only that it's useful, like these can be useful, but once they're empty, you know, they're done, you throw them away. But something that's going to stay with you for years. Something that's going to develop a memory of its own. It's going to get its own little scuffs and dents and things, and you can remember, hey, you know, I remember how we got this cut. I remember how we got this dent. And the idea that you can personalize either directly with someone's initials or biomechanically through the way that you use it, the way that you hold it, the way that you apply it to a task, day in, day out, for years, maybe even decades. Well, I don't know if you can really get anything valuable out of this. It's just some ideas and thoughts I wanted to share. Thank you for watching.